I'm not actually feeling very well today. I'm supposed to be taking Esther to the Summit Show and Run in 1 week and 2 days. Now, another little thing that went wrong, it simply won't come out. Gearbox mount bolted back in, plug in the VVT solenoid. Next to go on was the trumpets. I turned my attention to her interior. She wouldn't start. Why have I got an Allen key in my mouth? Who knows? I then had a working rev counter. Apparently, they're over £300 each. I paid a lot less than that.
So, just put some fuel in this old banger. Oh, we had a misfire.
It was going so well, wasn't it? Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes and today I'm back around the garage with all of my old school Ford Escorts. Now I'm not actually feeling very well today, which is unusual for me, especially since I've been living a way more healthy life, but I can't let that stop me because I'm supposed to be taking Esther, my ST170 powered Mark 1 Escort, to the Summit Show and Run in 1 week and 2 days. Now I've been cracking on with a couple of bits around here. I have been filming some clips as I go, which I can overlay. Some of the things have been a bit time consuming, but let me bring you up to speed with everything that I have got done. Now, the first thing I did today was to sand down Esther's strut brace brackets so that I could then drop them off to the guy that does my zinc plating. Now, every time I mention zinc plating on the channel, I always get people messaging me, asking me who the company is, but they've actually asked me not to promote them because they are so busy. But if you're watching, guys, massive thanks for squeezing my bits in. I really appreciate it. They're not promising to have the bits back before I leave for my Northern Ireland trip, but fingers crossed they do. I also dropped off my alloy washer bottle and my alloy strut brace to have them polished to a mirror finish. Now, as you can see, I've got the front end of Esther on axle stands and I've got the jack underneath her gearbox, and I've lowered her gearbox down a little bit, and I've actually had some more really good luck about her gearbox. Now, with the gearbox lowered down, it gives me a little bit more space to get on the bolts that hold the slave cylinder to the bell housing, and today I removed the bolts that I had in there when I sort of half fitted the slave cylinder before. I had loads of washers stacked on them because these bolts were a little bit long, and as I mentioned, one of those threads seemed to be cross-threaded. Now, with the slave cylinder off, I wasn't quite able to get my tap into the threads to, see if I could, repair the threads. And there's definitely not enough room for me to drill it out and tap it to a bigger thread. But what I was able to do is use a bolt to, just wind it in. It was a bit of resistance at first, but I just kept winding it in gradually and then back out again. And the threads actually seem okay. And even though one of those threads definitely was cross-threaded, those bolts are now both done up tight and all is good. I've used bolts that have probably got about 4 or 5 threads past the thickness of the slave cylinder, so they're not too short, not by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not overly long, and yeah, they've done up absolutely fine, which is awesome. I've also given the clutch another bleed. I've done it on my own, but I was using this one-way valve pipe thing that I've got, and there's actually free play on the clutch arm, even though there wasn't before. So whereas I was thinking, I need to basically get the slave cylinder bolted up properly and then, confirm that there isn't free play on the clutch arm, and then, remove the slave cylinder again and see about shortening the rod, I actually don't need to do that. I can probably show you the noise at least. So yeah, there's a good, it feels like, somewhere between 5 and 10 millimeters of movement on that clutch arm. So what that means is I don't need to modify the box like some people do, or modify the slave cylinder, and yeah, all is well. So the release bearing on the clutch will now not be constantly spinning all the time. It'll only, be spinning and under pressure when you press the clutch, which is exactly how it's supposed to be. Now, the only explanation I can think of as to why it is okay now, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't okay before, because I remember knowing that I do need free play on the clutch arm, and there was when the slave cylinder wasn't fitted, and I thought that was okay. But when the slave cylinder was fitted, there definitely wasn't any free play before. But the release bearing that's in there now is slightly different than the one that came out. I'll just show you. So I've got these two release bearings over here. This is the release bearing that came out of that gearbox, and this is a different type one that I had in my garage, and when I line them up and look at them, the dimensions, the clutch arm sort of goes in here and here, so I'm sort of measuring from here to the face and from here to the back, and the dimensions seem the same. So I don't really think this would be a reason why I've now got free play and I didn't before. But maybe there's something I'm not seeing that is different between these two.
So I realised whilst editing this video that you can't really see the difference that I'm talking about with these bearings. But basically, the bit that spins is a slightly different design. So the front of the bearings is a slightly different design. But what I was trying to explain was dimensionally, they seem the same. So I'm not actually sure why I would have the free play now, but I didn't have before. Hope that makes sense, guys.
But ultimately, I'm not going to think about it too much. At the end of the day, I've got the free play that I need now. I've got the slave cylinder bolted to the bell housing now, and I haven't had to remove the gearbox. And as I showed you in the last video, we don't have the noise coming from the bearing, so all is good. Now, another little thing that went wrong when I failed to get this car ready for the Ford show was the bracket that I made for this catch can broke. So I bent up a strip of aluminium and drilled some holes in it, and then to fit the new bracket I just needed to remove the grille because the bracket is nut and bolted next to the horn, which is behind the grille. And while the grille was off, I gave the areas behind the grille a quick clean with degreaser before refitting the grille. Although I am thinking maybe I should have took this to my guy to get polished as well, but it is what it is. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention, I noticed that the breather box on the block, this thing here, which I have connected to my catch can via a hose, was really close to the slave cylinder. And part of me thought that, maybe that was what was making it so difficult to fit the slave cylinder. So I did actually set about trying to remove this, but what I found is once you've got the bolts out, you can't remove it without removing the engine mount there. It simply won't come out, and the bottom bolt on this thing is a nightmare to get back in without removing the engine mount as well. So I aborted that, but when I did those bolts up, I sort of held it this way as much as I could away from where the slave cylinder was going to go, which may have given me another millimetre or so of clearance. That didn't stop the slave cylinder going on before, and all I've really changed is the adapter plate. But yeah, it was just a thought I had. But yeah, trying to get that bottom bolt in to that breather box after I sort of aborted trying to take it off, that was one of the things that have been really time consuming today. But that's life. I'm just really glad that I've had yet more luck with Esther's gearbox. So that's all I've been up to during the sort of half a day that I've been round here. Obviously, I need to lift her gearbox back up and put the bolts back in to bolt the mount back to the lowering blocks, which are mounted to the floor. And then I might spend a little bit of time cracking on with a couple of bits, but I don't want to stay around here too long because, as I say, I am feeling ill. I'm not coming around here tomorrow, but I will be coming around here the next day, and I'll continue this video then.
Once I've got the gearbox raised up and the gearbox mount bolted back in, I decided to refit the exhaust properly whilst the car was jacked up. Then I got Esther back on the ground and removed her spark plug cover to plug in the VVT solenoid. Next to go on was the trumpets, and then I removed the battery to take it home to charge it. The first thing I did when I came back around the garage 2 days later was refit Esther's fully charged battery. Then I turned my attention to her interior. First to go in was the heater box, which is bolted in with 4 bolts, including this really annoying one near the windscreen wiper motor. I tucked the wiring loom back up under the dash. And here you can see where I've mounted the indicator wiring diodes behind the steering column bracket. Next to go in was the heater pipes. Firstly, the bits that are screwed to the heater box, and then the pipes that lead up to the vents, and the vents themselves, which just push into the dash top. I decided that I wanted to test run the engine, so I wired up the battery, poured some water in Esther's radiator, and tried to fire her up, but she wouldn't start. The plugs were fouled from over-fueling, so I threw in a brand new set of genuine Ford ones. Why have I got an Allen key in my mouth? Who knows? I wired up the new dash clocks next, including connecting the brown wire from the ME221 loom to the rev counter input on the new clocks. And Esther then had a working rev counter. Next to go in was the carbon fibre switch panel. Then I screwed in the new dash clocks, bolted in the gearbox shifter and refitted the steering wheel. I am feeling even more rough today. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice, but I'm definitely coming to the end of my illness, thankfully. Although my beautiful girlfriend has said she's starting to get a sore throat, so she's got it all to look forward to. Esther is now somewhat back together. There's still a few loose ends to tie off, but before we get into that, let me show you what I acquired yesterday. Some more toolboxes. Now, these actually came from a friend of my beautiful girlfriend Kat's mum, and yeah, she was basically giving them away, but we did give her some money. When I googled these boxes, the brand is Kin Chrome Evolve. Apparently, they're over £300 each, and I paid a lot less than that. We did have to rent a van and stuff, but yeah, still a really good deal. It actually came full of stuff, tools, a lot of screws and that, to be honest. There was spanners in here, but they weren't very good, so I gave them to Kat's dad. And there was a rivet gun set, but I've already got 2 of them, so I gave that to Kat's dad. So yeah, there are tools in there. They're nothing special, but yeah, I'm sure some of them will come in handy. And yeah, see what I mean about the screws and that. And in any case, I'm just glad to have another couple of toolboxes. Now, I'm not sure whether I'm going to put these at the garage at home where I store Maud, or maybe put them in Heidi's garage next to the toolboxes I've already got. Because to be fair, I could do with a bit more storage. This drawer, you know, it doesn't shut because it's full. Yeah, I've maxed out the capacity of my current toolboxes. These screwdrivers I have to keep in here, so it'd be nice to have a drawer for screwdrivers. So yeah, chuffed to bits with my new toolboxes. So I'm pretty sure Esther is ready for a shakedown. She's not fully back together, but yeah, I think she's back together enough for a quick joyride. I decided to cable tie the speed sensor wires to the brake line there. There's plenty of slack on the wire, but that should, you know, keep it, you know, in the sort of vicinity of the brake line. So yeah, that should be sweet. I was hoping to program the Speedo in this video, but that'll have to wait until next time. I have fired up the engine and stuff. She runs absolutely sweet, although she wouldn't start before with the old spark plugs in. Basically, they were covered in fuel where I've been trying to fire her up without any coolant in the system. When you haven't got any coolant in your system, the ECU basically thinks the engine's super cold and throws a load of excess fuel in, which fouls the plugs. The interior, as you would have just seen, is pretty much back together. I've only got 1 screw in the dash. I've only got 2 screws in the switch panel. I'm hoping to get the green bulbs for these before we go to Northern Ireland, so yeah, that's why I haven't screwed that in fully yet. But yeah, I think I'm just going to get all this crap out of the car and take her for a quick joyride before I leave here today. Alright, so just put some fuel in this old banger. And everything so far feels absolutely fine. I know I've said it before, but this car feels so much better to drive than Maud. And yeah, when I haven't been driving this thing for a while and then I jump back in it, yeah, it's awesome, man. Yeah, it's really cool to have such luxuries like a rev counter. The Speedo works as well, although I think it's under reading, but it was never going to be accurate out of the box. I need to program it. The oil pressure gauge. Now, some of you guys were saying that I shouldn't try and bodge it because it's a very important gauge to have, and you're absolutely right. I should buy a brand new one, but to be honest, I need to keep some money in my pocket for the Northern Ireland trip. I've already got to get some rear tyres for this thing. I'm going to raise the suspension, which means I'm going to need the car aligned. So, yeah, I'll just have to be a bit choosy where I put my money at the moment. But I will be grabbing an oil pressure switch for the oil pressure light, because they are super cheap.
So at least I'll have an oil pressure light. So if anything does go wrong, you know, and we lose oil pressure, the light will come on and I can shut it off immediately. But, you know, long term, I do want to have a light and a gauge. To be honest, it works most of the time. It's working now. I should buy a new one now, but you know, money's tight, and you know, we are going on a bit of an adventure that's going to cost money. But yeah, love my new dash. It's really cool. I still need to get a VDO fuel gauge for the centre console. Again, that's not anything that I'm in a hurry to get, because you know, I do have a sight tube on my tank. It's annoying having to look in the boot to see how much fuel you got, but it'll be fine. Yeah, just feels so good to get behind the wheel of this thing again. Oh man. All the times where things are going wrong and you seriously consider selling your favourite car, and then once everything's going right and you get back behind the wheel, oh, I'm just so grateful that I never have thrown in the towel with this thing. I absolutely love her. Misfire.
It was going so well, wasn't it? Yeah, luckily, literally just down the road from base, she started misfiring. Now, my first thoughts were maybe the core pack is starting to break down. I decided to pull all the plugs out and just see if, you know, they all looked the same, which they do, but they're all black, which would normally indicate that it's over fueling, but you know, this car was mapped. So then it made me start looking at the coolant sensor, and what I noticed is this wasn't clicked onto the sensor properly. You know, you've got this sort of clip thing which, you know, you normally have to press to pull it off, but this was able to just pull off without pressing that. Now, this has always been a bit of an issue with this setup in terms of there's not really much room where the bulkhead is. I've tried to dig it in as much as I can, but yeah, sometimes it's a nightmare to get the plug onto this sensor. And what I've done in the past is I've had to sort of undo it half a turn, put the plug on and then tighten it back up. But what I've just realised is when I'm trying to undo this, because it's got like a plastic outer, you know, which has got the hex on it, basically I'm undoing it, you know, like sort of eighth of a turn at a time, because there's not really much room for the spanner, and it don't seem to be coming out. So what's obviously happening is that black plastic bit is just spinning, and it's not actually undoing. So what that probably means is that the wires inside, or the electrics inside, have, you know, ended up spinning and getting broken. That sensor actually broke when we had to replace the clutch in Northern Ireland last year. And Hugo tried to sort of, you know, wire it up with long bits of wire, but that didn't work. So, yeah, these sensors, you know, once the outer bit spins and, you know, it puts tension on the wiring inside, they're normally kaput. So because the plugs are black, and because I've just noticed that problem with that sensor, I do think that basically it's overfueling, and that's what caused the misfire. And the reason I was able to drive it for so long before that happened is because I literally put brand new plugs in today. Now, I don't have my laptop with me, so I can't confirm anything, and it's late and I'm tired and I'm ill. So yeah, I'm going to call it quits around here for today, and I'm going to jump in my other old banger Ford Escort and make my way home.
Alright, so I actually stayed in a bit longer because I wanted to remove that coolant sensor, and I had to basically destroy it to remove it. And then when it was out, I put the metal end in a pair of mole grips and then put a spanner on the plastic end, and I confirmed my suspicions that, you know, the black plastic bit is just spinning. And obviously it's within that black plastic bit where the pins are that the connector connects to. So, you know, if that's spinning separate from the rest of it, you know, the wiring inside just gets destroyed. So definitely needs a new sensor. Hopefully that was the cause of my misfire. You know, the sensor probably wasn't working all day, and the misfiring just started happening once the plugs got fouled up again. Yeah, I'll confirm it next time around the garage when I've got my laptop. Now, I didn't get as much done in this video as I was planning, but I am going to end it here. So I'm leaving this video on a little bit of a cliffhanger, which is a very YouTube thing to do, isn't it? But yeah, find out in the next video what was causing my misfire. Now, in a couple of days, I'm actually going to see my carbon guy, Gary Ball, to pick up some more carbon fibre for Esther, but also some more carbon fibre for this car. So yeah, really looking forward to that. And while I'm there, I'm very excited to check out what Gary has been up to. He's been moulding full body shells and all sorts. But yeah, for now, I'm going to end this video here. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe if you're new. Check out my website for merch and parts. Feel free to follow me on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. Massive thanks to my patrons for your ongoing support. I will leave all the links to all of that in the description as usual, along with my email address for anyone who wants to contact me. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.